Alright everyone, hello and welcome into the day after Carolina. This is your comments, my reactions, our video. This is our group collaborative project here on our tiny corner of Vikings internet. The way that this works is that yesterday I told you to leave comments on the post-game video following the Minnesota Vikings win over the Carolina Panthers by the final 34-28 in overtime on the road. You did that. You left a lot of comments for me to go through. I will feature those comments today. This is the opportunity for you to be heard as the audience member that you are, and I will react to your comments here in real time. So a lot of good comments on yesterday's video. Hopefully I can get some new people in here, and then we will continue this series next week. Actually, in 2 weeks, we'll be taking the week off because it's a bye week finally, which is a much-deserved break for all of our mental health, given just the wildness that we've experienced after just 6 weeks of Vikings football. All right, I want to get into this and get this over with because I want to go back to the American League Championship Series. Currently watching the Houston Astros get their butts whooped, and that is always a great time. So, first comment today comes from Westworld. They say, I feel like Justin Jefferson is going to hold out and demand a trade in a few years. I wouldn't blame him. So I understand where you're coming from with this. I understand the sentiment. It's not the first time that I've seen it. My take on this is that we're still a few years away from Justin Jefferson and his contract extension becoming the talk of the town. It's only year 2 for Justin Jefferson. I think that if we're still experiencing the same pain points with this team, like, run first offense, running on second and long, running on third and long, not peppering our star wide receiver with targets and attacking down the field. I think if we have those same problems in 2 to 3 years, when the contract extension becomes a reality that has to be dealt with, we have bigger problems, because that means we haven't made any significant changes. And if that's true, then yeah, he probably will have this attitude in 3 to 4 years. But for right now, I don't see it. I don't see that this era of, this Mike Zimmer era continuing on past Justin Jefferson's rookie contract. I just don't, unless we see some wildly increased success from the formula that hasn't got us very much of any over the last 8 years. Next comment comes from Matt. They say, they beat us on special teams. That's the only reason why it was close. Missed field goals and a blocked punt for a touchdown. Like, you didn't even watch the game. Why are you making videos? All right, so I have 2 responses to this. Number one, I'm making videos because I can. And number 2, that's my point. I mean, thank you for astutely pointing out the inefficiencies of the Minnesota Vikings yesterday, that allowed the Carolina Panthers to stay in this game. Because statistically, if you look at what the Carolina Panthers offense did, with Sam Darnold being atrocious, Robbie Anderson dropping so many passes, the fact that the Vikings defense was, forcing that offense to be stagnant, getting turnovers themselves, you would think that the Vikings would be walking away with this before the fourth quarter even started, and it just wasn't the case. I don't care if it's defense that has mental lapses. I don't care if it's special teams that has mental lapses. I don't care if it's the offense that has mental lapses. Those have to be taken care of and dealt with. You could say last year that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers game that we played and lost was because of special teams, because Dan Bailey had his meltdown game that day. And, there's an argument to be made that if he makes all those field goals, or the offense just gets it in the damn end zone, maybe we have a different outcome. But unfortunately, that's not what happened. And I think it's fair to criticize this team for leaving a Carolina Panthers team in the game as long as they did. And they gave them the opportunity at the end to tie it, and it happened. So it's better to, not to look at the special teams blunders and just shrug that off. You have to criticize them in all aspects of the game, because if they're not performing and they're letting bad teams hang around, it's not good. And that's all I have to say about that. Next comment comes from Brady McKay. They say, the Cardinals are 6-0 and we almost beat them, so it seems to me that we can at least compete with the good teams. The next stretch of games will be extremely tough, but I think you're underestimating the Vikings. And that's a very fair critique. It absolutely is, because you could point to a lot of different things and say, this team could be 5-1. You could point to a lot of different things and say this team could be 1-5. And I think that is why that this is a fair criticism. And maybe I am overlooking it, or, maybe I'm underestimating them a little too much, because this team is such an enigma. Every week it's a different product, and every week you can't really predict what's going to happen based on the previous one or the one from 2 weeks ago. The fact that we went toe-to-toe with the Arizona Cardinals and almost beat them in their home stadium, is mind-blowing given the product that we've seen following it. It's bizarre. So I think this is a fair criticism. I welcome this counterpoint, and you may be onto something here if they are able to be successful here in the next few weeks. Next comment comes from Giddy Kong. They say, after this game, do you think Kirk is proving himself more and more as an MVP candidate? How do you feel about Justin Jefferson's game today? I don't have really any criticism or comments or anything really to say about Justin Jefferson's game. I think it was fine. I don't have no complaints other than, maybe I would like to see him get the ball more, but that's neither here nor there. That's always going to be my criticism of any game that Justin Jefferson plays in. If he's not getting 15 targets, 10 catches for 120 yards and 2 scores, I might be a little unhappy, but, let's be realistic. As far as the Kirk Cousins MVP candidate discussion goes, I mean, yeah, you could probably put him in as a low-end candidate right now. Statistically, it makes sense. He's been clutch at the end of games. So, but I don't know. Do MVP voters view him as that? I think after the Seahawks game, we were all like really huddled around that discussion. We were seriously having him, but like he just had the best game of his Vikings career, in my opinion. Maybe he is an MVP candidate, and then things cooled off for against the Browns and against the Lions, but I don't know if he keeps this pace up. He's probably in that discussion. We'll just have to see how it goes. Next comment comes from Violet Valkyrie. They say it would have ultimately been better for the future of the team if they had lost. Do you think this buys Zimmer another season? So if you're a Vikings fan on the end of the spectrum that wants change, this was pretty devastating for you, because going into the bye week at 2-4 probably would have prompted change to happen a lot sooner. But now that now that this team is 3-3, it has bought Mike Zimmer some time. Does it buy him an entire new season? No, I don't think that this does. I think that this gives him the opportunity to work towards buying himself another season. I do think it opens up that door, because now that he's 3-3, ownership in the front office could be like, all right, you're 500, you got the rest of the season, let's see what you do with it. So I think that this has bought him some time, probably the rest of this season, but has it bought him next season? No, he hasn't achieved that yet, so we'll see how he does with the rest of the schedule. Next comment comes from Noah Koski. They said, it was nice to see Breeland get that pick on that first play. What does the potential future look like for him in this town this season and even further down the line? So great question, because it's actually topical given what happened today in the news. And that was Patrick Peterson has been placed on injured reserve. We will not see him for 3 games. And if you're wondering if the bye week counts, it does not. Technically, the bye week is not considered part of the 3-week IR. It's actually a 3-game IR, so he will be out for the next 3 games. We will not see him again until the first Packers game, the first time that we meet Green Bay, and that is fucking devastating. So to answer your question in the short term, Bashaud Breeland is going to have to step up, as well as Cam Dantzler. He's been good since the Seahawks game, but I'm hesitant to crown him, because here's the spectrum. He was not good against Joe Burrow, Kyler Murray, and Russell Wilson. He has been good against Baker Mayfield, Jared Goff, and Sam Darnold. Quite a bit of difference between those 6 guys. The front half loaded with superstar talent. The back half, I don't know, kind of middle of the road and not very good when we're talking about Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold. So Bashaud Breeland has to step it up. And here's the catch-22 to add on to that. If Bashaud Breeland is really good this season and he continues the current success that he's had over these past 3 games, he will likely become unaffordable for us, and he will get a big money contract somewhere else if he has a good season. So you want him to play good this year, but if you're concerned about his longevity with the team beyond 2021, you don't want him to play good so that he'll stick around and really have no other choice. I don't know. It's hard to say. I would like to see him come back if he continues to play well, but I'm not sure what he is yet. So we'll see what happens once he starts facing much better quarterbacks that aren't Jared Goff and Sam Darnold. The jury is out on Bashaud Breeland. Next comment comes from Time. They say, I think the O-line might be fixed. Oli Udoh was not so good. Darisaw was good. Is it Wyatt Davis season? So the O-line will never be fixed until we get a new center. Garrett Bradbury is not that guy. I am dangerously close to labeling him a first-round bust. I just think it needs to happen. I think that they need to change centers. I think in 2022 we will have a different center, not named Garrett Bradbury. I think he's out. Is it Wyatt Davis season? No, I don't think so. I don't think Oli Udoh has done anything egregious enough for him to get pulled, like Drew Samia was last year, and Dakota Dozier as well. So I think Oli Udoh is here to stay as the starting right guard, if not just for not consistency. I don't know what the word I'm looking for is right now, but just, so that they can keep this starting unit intact and see if they progress throughout the season. The only experiment I would like to see for Wyatt Davis season would be maybe to put him at center and see what happens. So we'll see what they do during the bye week. Keep tabs on the bye week reports. Next comment comes from TBass2323. They say Zimmer has always been horrible at game time adjustments. He constantly gets out coached. And he's kind of using that as, the point of departure to blame, the Carolina Panthers sticking in that game for as long as they did, undeservedly so. And it seems to be, an accurate assessment of Mike Zimmer and how he handles certain situations, because the criticism that we've all had for the longest time now has been that he's too conservative. He plays to not lose instead of playing to win. And he backs himself into corners and pigeonholes himself into taking safer play calls or safer routes. Because we all point to like the end of the first half, how it's just not generating points, and their ideology or their philosophy is to test the waters on the first play with a run. If they get a lot of yards, then they'll go for it instead of just going for it right from the beginning. It feels like it's just another one of those situations where Mike Zimmer isn't up to the task of just putting their boot on the throat of their opponent and putting them away. He's just too conservative, and I don't know why. Stubbornness is just the ugly evil villain here. Next comment comes from Blackjacks. Vikings games are stressful to watch this year. Every game coming down to the last few minutes or overtime. Somebody astutely pointed out on social media yesterday that they've lost in regulation, they've won in regulation, they've lost on a missed field goal, they've won on a field goal, they've lost in overtime, and they've won in overtime. Did they lose in overtime? I forget what the comparisons were, but yeah, every week. And even Peter Schrager said on Good Morning Football that he doesn't know how Vikings fans deal with this every week. And I agree. The thing is, though, like, you can't hurt me with this team anymore. If they do something that's depressingly terrible or just laugh out loud atrocious, all you can do is just sit there and laugh and just say, like, yep, that's the Vikings. That's my team. That's what they do. That's their MO. But I agree. This is too much stress. We need to have a normal ass game. Hopefully that comes against the Cowboys after the bye. Next comment comes from Samson. Let's not forget how Dantzler got exposed on 4th down again. Cameron Dantzler is part of the aforementioned discussion earlier when I pointed out that Patrick Peterson is going on the 3-game IR. This is something that needs to be talked about. As much as we want Cam Dantzler to be the starting cornerback for the Minnesota Vikings over Bashaud Breeland, the monkey paw has curled. We are now getting that and Bashaud Breeland. They are going to be our 2 outside starting corners for at least the next 3 games until we get Patrick Peterson back. And Mike Zimmer said that he doesn't believe that Patrick Peterson's injury, the hamstring, is season-ending, so we'll see how that goes. But Cameron Dantzler has to step up. As the only, I believe, cornerback, either the only or one of 2 cornerbacks currently under contract for this team at this position next season, he needs to take big steps. He's having a huge sophomore slump, and he's not getting enough playing time to correct himself. And some of the playing time that he does get turns out to be a fucking disaster. The Cam Dantzler experiment is on notice, and we need to see him definitely step up over this next month. Final comment comes from, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Brennan Godin, I'm going to say. Do you think the Vikings messed up by not firing Zimmer and hiring Stefanski? Had you asked me this question a year ago, I would have said yes. Since you're asking me this question after week 6 of the 2021 season, I'm not so sure anymore. Kevin Stefanski to me represents something, it would have been a change in a different direction completely, because we go from a defensive-minded coach to an offensive-minded coach. You get the benefit of not having your offensive coordinator getting poached every season by another team because he is the offensive coordinator, so that would be nice. But the thing is, though, as I reflect on that time period, Kevin Stefanski as a new hire by the Minnesota Vikings would have represented more of the same. Not because we're suddenly, not because we're still defensive minded. It's because it's an internal hire, whereas Mike Zimmer was an external hire. So don't forget, Mike Zimmer and the coaches underneath him were, it was all part of his, his era. And, Kevin Stefanski's been with the organization forever. I don't know. I don't think it would have been successful. And I think I answered this question in another video where somebody asked me, would we have a better record currently with Kevin Stefanski as head coach and this same group of players? And honestly, I think the answer would be no. So no, I don't think that they messed up. I think that they messed up by giving Zimmer the contract extension, and same for Rick Spielman and Kirk Cousins. But at the same time, it's hard to look at Kevin Stefanski going to a completely different situation in Cleveland. And he did have. I think he's probably had similar results. So I don't know. I'm kind of iffy on that question. But ask me again at the end of the year, and I'll see. Maybe my answer will change. But had you asked me a year ago, I would have said no. I would have said yes. Asking me right now, I feel like it's a no. But anyway, that's going to do it. Those are all of your comments that I had time to respond to. Thank you very much once again for watching. I will see you in the next one.